Welcome to Windows on the World. This is part 2 of our special climate Catastrophobia, which is all about the new IPCC scaremongering document, which is about telling us what we're going to be able to do on the back of their predictions, which, guess what, have never come true. I'm joined now with Piers Corbyn for the second part of the show, and he's going to give his reactions to this latest document known as the Special Report 15, and also the antidote to the Special Report, which is fact. So, Piers, are you there?
I am.
Great. Okay, I'll just turn you up a little bit, and
Okay.
just so we can make sure that we've got a good signal. Yeah, that's fine.
Is your level right? Yes.
I think that's perfect, yes. So,
Okay.
what's your reaction to the first part of the show and also to the SR15 document?
Well, I think what you did just now was extremely interesting and very important, and people should listen to it and listen to it again. And my own reaction to the what they call the SR15 document, i.e. the latest propaganda thing from the United Nations IPCC, is firstly it is pure propaganda. It claims they are trying to eradicate poverty, but actually it is the opposite. What their policies do is spend loads of public money on super corporations doing stupid things like massive wind farms and damming the Amazon basin and so forth. So the first point I make is it's pure propaganda. The second point is it pretends to have science backing it up in terms of measurements and physical theory. In fact, these claims are completely false. The measurements are all over the place and are falsified anyway. They do adjustments. And secondly, the physics they put forward is nonsense. It's bad physics. The assumptions about so-called greenhouse gases are incorrect, and people who attended our talk in Bristol, for example, know that. And also, if you look on the presentation I gave there and subsequently in Camden, go on weatheraction.com and you'll see a link to it. You can see that the greenhouse theory as put forward by these propagandists is incorrect. And the third point I would make is that the basis of the whole SR15 is that carbon dioxide is a problem, and therefore humanity is a problem, and you have to be controlled more. Whereas in reality, carbon dioxide is not a problem, it's the gas of life, and we want more of it, not less.
Well, yes, we do keep trying to re-emphasise that point, because the IPCC tried to keep re-emphasising their point, which seems to be that they talk about things that may happen, but they're more interested in mitigation, which is where the control comes.
Yeah.
The mitigation is where they earn the money, really, isn't it? And also,
well,
where
mitigation put forward them is theft. It is pure theft. They have giant projects to save the planet. And I would ask any person who feels they are green in any sense, just a tiny bit, just look through the big green projects going on and ask yourself, are they good or are they fake green? I mean, the Drax power station, for example, which is now destroying huge swathes of North American forest to make it into wood pellets, shipped across the Atlantic, and then burnt, where it makes a lot of pollution, equivalent to increasing the number of diesel cars in the United Kingdom by 25%. Now, this, by any stretch of the imagination, is not green. I would just call it as fake green. But you can go through all of these things and you see there's problems. Take wind farms. People imagine wind farms are somehow good, but the actual figures show, and this is a recent report from the University of Harvard, no less, that because of the way wind farms cause turbulence, they actually increase the surface temperature in their region, because they got more mixing, and at night you can't have the ground cooling so much if there's turbulence above or reaching the ground. So the wind farms themselves cause surface warming. And also, they produce huge amounts of carbon dioxide in their production anyway. So they don't do any of the gains they claim. I mean, that's just another example. But go on to that presentation I mentioned, and you can list and see green projects and just ask yourself, are they doing what they claim? I mean, obviously, things like saving nature and woodlands and so on is completely right, but this is not what the green policies of saving the planet are about. These are about making money for the super corporations and controlling people more and more. You see, they say they're eradicating poverty. Well, you walk around Camden Town and you see there's more people sleeping on the streets than ever before. They've been forced out of properties under Agenda 21. Properties are getting smaller and more expensive, and so forth. Now, that's just an example in the West, but in the developing world, it's just the same. We have increasing super exploitation, and people in developing countries being deprived of low-priced electricity and being forced to pay more. Well, this is just ridiculous. What we've got to have is energy at costs around the world, not at super profits.
Exactly. And it's very good that we are in touch with people who can counter these claims. But we are in the minority, aren't we? Because the public don't have access to these scientists. And I've met these guys over the years through you and through associates, and we've filmed them. We've been to quite a few conferences. You went to the Porto conference recently.
Yes, I did, yes.
And these people don't have a voice, but they are the quiet voice of reason, and that is why they don't have a voice, because we're talking about a full-on propaganda which is so ham-fisted it's become ridiculous. And we've gone through that in the first part of this show, so please listen to that, because it will give a good outline of what's behind it. Because I still get people who I know. I mean, we're talking about the the social media aspect of it, which is being shut down with anything that the powers that be don't like. That's a big thing on Facebook at the moment. But what did people expect? I mean, the whole point of Facebook was there to control the narrative, monitor the narrative, and of course the narrative's probably getting a bit out of control, so now they've got to control it. So why are people complaining that they're being shut down? It's probably a compliment, really. But, I mean, this is the thing about the upside-down world that we live in, and the data can be looked at, and I'm not amazed about this, but I'm very, very disappointed and disillusioned by these people that I've known for years, and they'll say one thing to me because they probably think I'm a bit of an extremist because I'm into fact, and then they'll spout, but what we're going to do about the poles melting. Now, the North and South Pole.
Well, it's completely untrue.
Well, can you just address that? Because, I mean, I've looked at some of this data over the years, but what is the actual situation with the polar ice caps at the moment, the North and the South Poles?
Well, I'll explain that, and about some ways forward to combat all this stuff. The actual polar ice caps now are increasing in amount of ice. That is ice depth and, generally speaking, area. The Antarctic has been increasing for a long time, and the Arctic, including Greenland, has been increasing in the last year or so. The rate of increase of ice now on Greenland is really stupendous, but the BBC do not report this. What we have is a propaganda media where, for example, the BBC won't allow any voice against them, except sort of tokens. Like if they want to have a so-called criticism of the global warming propaganda, they'll bring on an American and denounce him as a Trump supporter or something, or they'll bring along a lord from Britain who may say good things, but in the end they just say, oh, you're not a scientist, and dismiss him. Whereas, you see, at Weather Action, we can actually predict what the sun is going to do, events on the sun, changes in the solar wind, changes in the jet stream, and make long-range forecasts. And frankly, if the IPCC cared a damn about world climate and the dangers of storms and so on, they would use our work, but instead they suppress it. So what we've done recently in response to the IPCC is we've launched a 6-point challenge, which I'm happy to say is getting support from a lot of people. We're making 6 points. The first point we make in the 6-point challenge, and you can see it on weatheraction.com, is that this SR15 is the most deluded nonsense claims and of climate alarmism ever made, and it's equivalent to the United Nations weapons of mass destruction claims, which led to the Iraq War. It's just another type of weapons of mass destruction, but this is a weapon of mass destruction of real science. Secondly, we're challenging the IPCC to come forward with actual peer-reviewed, data-based evidence that shows carbon dioxide in the past increasing has caused warming. Now, we know there is no such scientific paper in existence. We only have the opposite, which shows that CO2 is controlled by temperatures. However, we're giving them a challenge till December the 1st to come up with something. We're challenging the BBC, the IPCC, and Al Gore. And after or on December the 1st, we'll have a big meeting or rally where we'll find out exactly what they've got to say. The third point we're making is that the real data is showing cooling, if you look at satellite data, world cooling, and that they are guilty of corruption and adjustments in a corrupt manner, which John McLean, you mentioned, has excellently exposed. And what we see now is a continuation of the fraud committed by the Climate Research Unit at the University of East Anglia in the up until about 2009. I mean, actually, we have a continuation of that fraudulent process, but there they were proven in emails to be operating explicitly fraud by, as they said, hiding the decline in temperatures they wanted to hide. The fourth point we make is that the World Health Organization, another part of the United Nations, is saying that millions of people die every year because of energy poverty. So we're pointing out that a lot of this energy poverty comes from price hikes caused by so-called climate save the planet policies, and that has to stop, and we want energy at cost, not at profit. And the fifth point we make is that what they're using is fake science, and their solutions are fake green and out to make profits, and indeed they admit that they're not actually interested in anything other than some sort of redistribution of wealth. But as I say, that so-called redistribution of wealth is theft for the super corporations around the world who are increasing their profits and power, not handing anything out to the poor. And the last point we make is that carbon dioxide is the gas of life, and we want more of it, not less. So I urge people to read that, propagate it, and turn up on or around December the 1st to whatever we do.
That's very good information there, Piers. And talking of John McLean, he's got some details.
Great guy.
We didn't put in the first part of the show, and his article carries on. And do listen to part 1 of Climate Catastrophobia for the background of this, and you can also look at the document which is on Joanne Nova, which is a website, an Australian website. It's called joannenova.com.au. That's JOANNE Nova NOVA.com.au. And he said, for April, June and July of 1978, and this is the surface temperature data measuring stations.
Yep.
Said for April, June and July of 1978, Apto Uto, which is the station in Colombia, had an average monthly temperature of 81.5 degrees C, 83.4 degrees C and 83.4 degrees C respectively. The monthly mean temperature in September 1953 at Paltinis in Romania is reported as minus 46.4 degrees centigrade. In other years, the September average was was about 11.5 degrees centigrade. So quite an anomaly in that one. At Golden Rock Airport on the island of St. Kitts in the Caribbean, mean monthly temperatures for December in 1981 and 1984 are reported as 0 degrees centigrade. But from 71 to 1990, the average in all the other years was 26 degrees centigrade. So how can it be 0 degrees centigrade in St. Kitts in the Caribbean? So he pulls out some of those. And the other thing that came up with this, Piers, that anyone can read this stuff. This is the point where I find about these mentally helpless people who cry about the polar ice caps melting. All this stuff you can just look at. I mean, I'm not even versed in a lot of the scientific terms that are used.
Well, look at it before it's rubbed out, I would say, because, the internet is being trashed by the powers that be.
Well, yes, but at the moment it's all still available. I'm talking about what's actually available to people.
Copy it down and put it somewhere.
Yeah, and the thing about it all is that you don't have to be scientifically qualified as a climate scientist to understand any of this, because most of the people who are making these decisions on your behalf are not qualified scientists, and this is the big deception in my view. Once you scrape the surface of this and you see what it actually is, I think the public would be so shocked that they wouldn't believe it. It would be a bit like saying, oh, we never meant to the moon. It's which is a different issue, and we have our different ideas on that, and I know what mine are, but we won't go into it. But the point is that it's breaking a paradigm. So people are much safer now, because this has been going on so long and been programmed so much into it, that they feel safer with thinking that we are in a climate catastrophophobia and we have to do something about it. I hear this all the time, and I was at a place in Glastonbury recently, a very well-meaning lady. These people want to save the world, but they're being completely conned. And she said, I'm reading a book about it at the moment, and when I finish that book, I will know everything about it. And she says, I'm 68 years old. I thought, so you've been on the planet 68 years? Well, that's an amazing amount of time when you think it's 4.5 billion years old as an estimate, isn't it? So you've seen a lot of climate change in 68 years, haven't you? This is the sort of thing that people in the know would be laughing their heads off at, really, isn't it?
Yes. Well, I think there's two big questions that when you're discussing with any person that says they're green. I mean, we're all green in the sense we want to defend real nature and stop smoke pollution. But there's two questions. Do you agree with green policies such as the Drax power station, which is increasing effective diesel pollution? Do you agree with other green measures, such as destroying the Amazon basin and all the tribes therein? And another set of questions is, what is oil? You see, when people do realise that actually oil is not a fossil, it is something which is made continuously deep down in the earth, it's never going to run out. Once you realise that, then the idea of these scarcities of whatever, which justifies man-made climate change policy, so-called, are completely unnecessary.
Yeah, we cover that in the talk.
If oil is effectively infinite in supply, there's no need for any of this poppycock.
No, that's absolutely right. Now, the thing is that we cover that in the talks. I mean, abiotic oil is found at depths of 40,000 feet, so it's not made out of fossils. And this is basic stuff that anybody can look up. But if you're going to tell a lie, tell a big one. And keep repeating it.
Right.
I mean, it's
that's
kind
what
of
Goebbels taught.
Well, I mean,
see, Al Gore is the new Goebbels, as far as
well,
it's how to make a big lie is you just make it bigger.
Well, he's a criminal. I mean, he's a criminal. So
he's a criminal and a thief. Yeah.
Yes, and so was Maurice Strong. And the thing is that people don't realise that behind these organisations, such as the UN, these people are just like a mafia. They're a mafia who get funded, and that's what I was talking about in the first part of the show. It's just a global mafia. And if you look at the track records of the UN, how many rapes have they committed in the past few years? It's like 60,000 or something. Just look it up. The UN going to countries, they've been actively caught now. They've been caught basically with stealing commodities and the intrinsic wealth of countries. They've been caught red-handed doing this. Just Google it. Basically, what are they doing? They're subverting...
Well, along with the Clintons, hand in hand, with destroying Haiti, for example. I mean, it's beyond belief what's going on in our names.
Well, that's absolutely right. But the point is that when people refer to the UN, they're not referring to a sort of a legitimate organisation that is actually worthy and does worthy things. They have to look what's behind it. I remember going to that lecture with you in Paris in 2015 or 2016, I think it was, the Paris Climate Challenge, where Ed Flaherty, the lawyer from Switzerland, was doing a talk about the UN being above international law. If you don't believe me, look at their charter of 19... yes, exactly. Listen, just 1 minute, 1947, that's what it is. The UN Charter of 1947. Have a look at that. They are immune from all searches and seizures, and all of their assets are immutable. They cannot be touched, and if they are found guilty of anything, they cannot be prosecuted. It's in their own charter. So you're talking about a mafia that is above the law. We're not talking about a great organisation. And UNESCO clearly state that education is not complete until attitudes have been changed. So the idea is to promote people into this fake paradigm of this belief system, this narrow belief system, which is absolutely intolerant of anything outside it. And it's very, very simple, childishly simple. Now, that brought me on to something I wanted to talk to you about, Piers, because I didn't hear you on Radio Kent, but some people who are listening to the show did, including Eric Von Essex, who I think is still in chat. Now, the thing is about that interview, he was saying that they had people on there who were brought on who sounded like plants, who were basically just reiterating propaganda. And can you tell us a bit about that? Because I didn't hear it, and you did about 2 or 3 interviews that day. So just take the floor and give us an example.
Yes, well, it was curious sort of thing. She started off by saying, was I a rogue scientist? I said, well, I'm a scientist. You're just making pejorative remarks to try and undermine what I'm saying. And then I said the usual things, that the UN claims were nonsense, and the world was actually cooling. But you're right. They had ready various just people who were propagating nonsense, and it was the same sort of thing happened on LBC, where as I'm speaking, they interrupt you and just put forward more and more propaganda. The interesting, of course, is I was even allowed on there at all, because we're definitely banned from the BBC. And if you want to get on the BBC to talk about climate, you need to either to be an American who they can denounce as being a Trump supporter, or you need to be a lord who's not a scientist, and then they can denounce you for not being a scientist. But I think the point to make about the United Nations and the European Union, because these are always wheeled out as somehow good organisations, you see. Now, most people who believe in the UN or the EU know nothing about either of them in practical terms. But they believe in the United Nations as a sort of happy-clappy place where countries can get together and do good things. Now, this isn't what is going on. It's a propaganda machine for world control by the super elites. But, most people believe in it for false reasons. The same with the European Union. Again, it's happy-clappy, countries hold hands and don't do wars with each other. Well, actually, it's an unelected dictatorship, and I would describe it as the Fourth Reich. And
yeah, but it's worse than that in a way, Piers. It's worse because
the European Union emission trading scheme is used to use UN climate propaganda to deindustrialise the West.
Well, it's a lot worse because, in actual fact, what the UN is a mercenary army. People don't realise this. Those people who are working for the UN as soldiers are mercenaries. They're not working for their own country. They're outside their own jurisdictions, and they're above the law. They're outside their own jurisdictions and above the law, which makes them mercenaries. They are not fighting for their own country or a worthy cause. They are interfering in the governance of sovereign nations.
Yeah, usually to channel resources to the super corporations. That's why they go into Mali to make peace, so-called, but it's to make sure that the uranium goes to France.
Absolutely correct. So, in conclusion, we've got about 5 minutes left.
Mm-hmm.
We've got geoethic.com. I would recommend everyone go there.
Yep.
Listen to us, because we have a variety of different information which can lead you into some very interesting areas, because we are in touch with people who are the quiet voice of reason, who are not being heard. And anything else to say, Piers, in this particular section? Because I did quite a lot of talking in the first one.
Well, yeah, just to round off, I would say what you were saying about the New World Order is very important. In terms of schools, every time I go to a school, I'm astounded by the level of brainwashing there. You see, schools have got a problem. They're meant to be teaching children to be critical and able to analyse the world and understand it, which is necessary for the advancement of science. But on the other hand, these critical faculties, of course, they have to suppress them and brainwash people to regiment working people into subjugation by the super rich. So, there's a lot of work to be done around freedom of expression and proper debate in schools. And anyone who's got access to a school with children there and so on, try and get debates going. That's the first point I would make. The second point is, come back to weatheraction.com, read our 6-point challenge. The scientists around the world who are saying exactly what I'm saying, namely that there's no evidence for the claims, and we have to challenge the UN and sidekicks up front. So get on there, read it, and then look out for announcements of what we're going to do from December the 1st onwards.
That's very good information there, Piers. And our talks, the bigger picture, will be seen all over the country, and we need people to organise them in their own area. Get in touch with us through windowsontheworld.net or even Weather Action. And we'll see you very soon. We also would appreciate anybody who wants to make a small donation, even a couple of quid a month, because it helps to pay for the considerable expenses and outgoings that we have. And I do want to keep bringing people this information, but it can be a bit sort of, it's not off-putting, but it's kind of frustrating sometimes, because our opposition are incredibly well funded, and we are in a negative equity kind of state, basically. So if anyone wants to just pay us a couple of quid a month or something like that, or you want to help us out a little, it's very much appreciated, because we do go all over the place putting this information out, and we are absolutely sovereign in the true sense of the word. So that's it from this part of the show. Just to remind everybody about Windows on the World, here's a little statement.
Windows on the World, analysing, disseminating and simplifying the bovine excrement that we all...
Wait a minute. Let's just put that one on.
I was waiting for that as well.
Yeah, I was waiting for that.
On the World, analysing, disseminating and simplifying the bovine excrement that we all have to wade through every day. Thanks for listening. Can't be easy.
Well, in actual fact, it is very easy. That was our mate Tony Hurst there. And in conclusion, thanks for listening. Listen to the first part of the show, Climate Catastrophobia, and we'll see you next week, 9 p.m. on windowsontheworld.net. That's good night from me and good night from Piers.
Yeah, good night. Thank you.